look, I think the long and short of it is I moved here. Heat pump seemed like a natural thing. I was dead excited because I was like, not only is it going to be like cheaper, but it's also, you know, I'm doing my bit for the environment. Oh my God, it was hell on earth for 2 years. We were freezing. I've spent a ton of money. And I was like, yeah, no wonder there's all these headlines in the papers. Then I met you. You're like, not all superheroes are in a cape. And now I love my heat pump. I would encourage anyone to look at heat pumps. And if it's right for the house, go for it. So I bought this property in, I think, 2021, at the beginning of 2021. And I loved it because it's old and got loads of character. But I knew that because it's old, I was going to have to invest some time in sort of making sure it was warm, etc., etc. So I knew I was going to have to do a refit and installation. What was interesting about it is it's off-grid. So I had an oil boiler, and obviously connecting to the gas mains wasn't really an option, very expensive. So I had to either choose a highly efficient oil boiler and have oil delivered, or I could go with a heat pump. So I want to say that like I did it out of like, green intent. I mean, that was an added bonus, but realistically, I think at that point in time, the only viable option was really to get a heat pump because I didn't really like the idea of having oil delivered.
Everyone's on a line though, right? So one of the first conversations we have with a new customer that's interested in low carbon, we want to establish where they are on the cost versus carbon. So people do it often, they're trying to chase the carbon, but want to make sure that they can justify the costs as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think that was true of us. Like, I did a lot of reading on it, and I knew that if done correctly, an air source heat pump would have been as efficient and maybe even cheaper than a gas boiler. So you're never going to get an oil boiler like that. So it really was like a bit of a kind of, no regret decision. So she thought.
Well, and oil's going to be the first sort of, if they do ban a fuel, it's probably going to be oil. That's the dirtiest. It's got the most particulates, and it's the worst for the air quality. So that's going to be the first one that goes.
Yeah. So I guess I chose right in the end. But I think one of the things, and sort of the reason that we're talking, and I bug you on WhatsApp often, is because the installation actually went terribly wrong. And I think for me, the hardest part about a heat pump is it's a simple technology if you think about it, because it's just a reverse fridge. That's how I think about it. But I don't know about you, and maybe you don't see it because you do this all the time. But it's a computer. It needs to be programmed and manipulated, just like writing code for a website would. And that is not something the average person really knows how to do. And so once the heat pump went in, and it clearly, our bills went up to £700-800 in the depths of winter per month. And I was like, okay, so I knew that there was going to be teething problems. But this, we've spent 2 years freezing in this house.
And I think that's an important thing to say, is that heating and hot water is something that we take for granted in our lives. So when that's taken away from you, or when you're told actually it's going to cost you $5,000 a year to achieve that, that's a really tough pill to swallow.
It really is, because I actually got a really good deal on the heat pump, because of the government scheme. So I think all in all, the heat pump, the buying and installation of the heat pump probably will have cost me about 12 grand. I'll get 7 of that back. So 5 grand, kind of comparable to a boiler. But when you add in everything else that I've spent, so just as a rundown, it went in, it was really expensive, and we were freezing. Which is not a good combination. So it was like, get the installers back. They told me everything's fine. It must be something else. So the rundown is, your builders didn't put the underfloor heating in or size the radiators correctly. So once we established, no, actually they did, then it was like, oh, well, then it must be Mitsubishi's fault. So then there was a tug of war with Mitsubishi, and then like a Mexican standoff, like where it was he said, she said. Then it was, oh, your meters don't work correctly because we're reading your heat pump remotely and it's only using X amount of energy, so it must be wrong. You try battling with an energy provider that's in administration, because we were with Bulb. So that was like another 9 months of fighting with those guys. And in the end, they just cancelled the bill. They didn't even say your meter was wrong or right. They just wrote the bill off because they were sick of me ringing. And then after the meter was wrong, I can't remember, something else was wrong. So it was constantly everybody else's fault. And this is like 2 years. And in that time, literally, Patrick, we were walking around with dressing gowns, with our hot water bottles stuffed down us, including the kids. Evan got a lung infection that was really bad. It nearly turned into pneumonia, and we just didn't use this entire space downstairs. We used the kitchen, and literally at 8 o'clock every night we went upstairs to bed because it was just too cold. Everyone's telling me the heat pump's working. So then I spent about £10,000 having the roof relined. I put airtight pin on the walls. I sealed all the skirting boards, the light fittings. What else did I do? I re-insulated a bunch of stuff. I had every single possible escape of air blocked up because I had a blower door test. And then when after that it got marginally warmer but still was freezing, I was like, oh my God, it's just the house, it's impossible. I'm never ever gonna get this house warm. And then, hello Patrick.
Yeah, so we came, what was it, November we came in?
Yeah, I think
Something
so.
like that, November, December maybe. And we found a few just very simple to fix.
But in your
elements.
experience, like, is this common? Do you see my story all the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how often?
More than once a week, we'll get a call from someone that's had a heat pump fitted by someone that doesn't really know what they're doing. They'll understand how to put pipes together and how to fit a radiator.
This is the engineers will know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a significant skills shortage. We don't have enough people that know how to do the physical work, and of those people that know how to do the physical work, not enough of them know how to do the theory, the calculation, and all of the clever bit
So the
that makes it work.
science, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the things that we've done, we haven't changed any pipes, we haven't changed any radiators or the underfloor. The only physical thing that we've changed has been a faulty pump, which was going full whack all the time. So it meant that there was a
So
low
it's just
DT.
constantly on. Which, I mean, and the thing was, like, the annoying bit about all of that is I told everybody that because we could hear it. We would be sitting down here watching television and it was whirring. And I was like, that cannot be right. In summer, the heat pump is, what's it heating? And like, literally, I would break out in like, I mean, I can't tell you the amount I've cried. Like, it sounds so stupid to say, like, I cried over the heating, but like, there's nothing worse than like being freezing cold in your house, but also knowing there's something wrong and everyone telling you, no, it's fine.
Like a conspiracy
Yeah.
against you. But that's like going back to the taking it for granted, because everyone, you feel like it's a fundamental right of yours to have a warm home. Like you're paying, you've renovated this lovely, beautiful house. You're paying for it to be heated and it's not working. It's just, that doesn't add up. So the things that we changed, there was...
The pump, yeah.
The pump we changed more recently, but actually before that we managed to make quite a lot of adjustments that have made a huge difference to the efficiency. So we've put it back on weather compensation, we've balanced the system because it wasn't balanced properly, we've changed some of the temperatures and the settings, but most of it has been software and optimization. There hasn't been anything major, but it's just that tiny cherry on the top for the installation that's made the biggest difference, and it's doubled the efficiency of the heat pump in the last 2 months, and this has been the coldest months of the year as well.
No, and honestly, we're warm for the first. I mean, I'm sitting here in a shot. This would not have happened last year. So just because I now understand it because I've had at pains to understand SOP and like the efficiency. You just talk through for everyone's benefit, like what is SOP. Like, what is a good SOP, what's a bad SOP, and where were mine?
So we've got SCOP. SCOP, seasonal coefficient of performance.
Seasonal coefficient
of performance.
What? Sorry, in English, what's that?
Just the efficiency.
Efficiency.
For every one unit of electricity you put in, how many units of power or energy
come out,
warmth into the house? So when we're looking at heat pumps, we'll put, usually to get cost parity to gas, you want to have over 3 SCOP roughly.
Over 3,
that's
okay.
300% efficiency of the heat pump. All heat pumps should be able to do that unless they're in a leaky house with no windows. And our average is kind of 4, so 400% efficiency, which sounds really, really good. You have to remember that until you get to 330, 340% efficiency, it would be cheaper to have a gas boiler.
Right.
So that goes back to the cost versus carbon line. Okay. Some people are happy to pay a little bit more than they would for a gas boiler to decarbonise their homes.
Yeah.
But really, it makes much more sense for the story and the journey for someone if you can decarbonise their home and make sure that their bills don't go up.
Yeah.
So
yours, what was mine?
Yours was one of the worst we've ever seen, which was, I think, 1.6 for the last year.
So basically, if using your math, my air source heat pump was costing me twice what it would have cost if I'd have got a gas boiler.
Yeah, but 60% less than if you were just using plug-in electric heaters, which would have cost you a few £100 to install. So bad, like really, really bad. And it's also, that doesn't conform to MCS standards. It's way below that. But it wasn't the fault of the heat pump. The technology works, and it wasn't the fault of the house, although the efficiencies that you made and the changes that you made after you were cold and you went, well, let's go to town and make it even better. That's great. That's going to make it work better. The underfloor was right, the radiators were right, the pipe sizing was right. It was just the optimization of the heat pump. So everything had been done okay, but there just wasn't enough of the controls and the efficiency in the settings. And we've checked it this morning. It's running at a SCOP of 3, but bearing in mind we've had -3 temperatures.
But it has got as high as 3.4, right?
So for January, I think it was 3.4. For February, it was 3.6. So far in March, it's been low, but I think we just have very cold weather.
But I mean, even that is such an improvement. And just what I've noticed is that, I mean, sometimes it's really hard, right, with energy bills because the prices are changing and we've had a lot of volatility in it. But I haven't felt any like worse off financially. If anything, I've felt better, and we're warm, so I feel like we're winning. Just to, like, not to get political on this stuff, but I think it is interesting to kind of zoom out from like my personal story, because a lot of people who'll be watching this will be trying to add up like whether they do it or not. And I think, the intended stated aim of the current government and the incoming government, if there is a change, is very much that materials lead the way in this decarbonisation revolution, and at the forefront of them are heat pumps. And I think you said just earlier we've got a shortage of engineers. So what's your take on even if we can convince people to take a heat pump, how is that going to affect us longer term?
Yeah, so there was a report done last year that says we need, in order to meet the targets that the government have set...
Of net zero?
Just of the numbers of heat pumps that they want to be installed per year within the next 4 years now. We need 9 times the amount of capable heat pump installers.
9 times. So how many hundreds of people of that is that, do you think, roughly?
30,000. I can't remember off the top of my head the amount of installers you need.
So
a lot.
About 30,000. How many have we got in the UK at the minute?
30,000, but we need 9 times the amount that we've got in order to do the 200,000 heat pump installs per year by 2028. And we're seeing more people leave the industry than join it, and no young people are coming in, or certainly not enough of a rate. So it's I think it's irresponsible of the government to be putting money in from the top and pouring money into incentives and schemes like we've got with the boiler upgrade scheme at the moment, without addressing the baseline, which is who's going to do all of this.
Yeah.
So we've got lots of people that can do it, lots of companies that are facilitating it in some way or another, and then farming out the work to people that don't really know how to get the best job done. They can do the majority of it, but that cherry on the top is what's making a difference of, in your case, thousands of pounds a year in running costs.
Well, and also you've got whenever anyone prints a story in the paper, it's usually about like my nightmare air source heat pump. So the narrative around them is not a good one. So for anyone who is watching this video, and it all sounds quite doom and gloom, but they still want to go ahead, because I mean, I think at this point in time, if you are thinking about some sort of renovation and there's a change of boiler needed, I think I would still recommend that people go with a heat pump above a gas boiler, just to future-proof the home. And in many respects, it's an asset, right? Because these things last for how long? 20, 30 years?
Oh yeah, 20 years I should think, as long as it's serviced well.
And a gas boiler's what, 10?
The average gas boiler, yeah, but they both have water running through them as the medium for transferring energy, and dirty water is one of the biggest things that kills it. So water quality as part of the bigger picture makes the biggest difference. Well, that's one of the reasons that gas boilers last for 7 to 10 years,
right?
Which is no good. If they're on a perfectly clean system and they're serviced, they should easily go 15, 20 years. And we think the same thing should be true of air source heat pumps.
Okay, so if I was, so what would you tell me if I was coming at this in 2021 and wanted an air source heat pump? What are the things I absolutely need to check out, look for?
So the person that's specifying it or installing it, you want to ask them a few questions like, what's the control strategy going to be? So if they say, well, we're going to fit it with weather compensation, good, that's going to really, really help. Ask them if they're going to zone the system, so they're going to split up the house into different zones and they're all going to turn off independently. If they say they do want to do that, That's going to reduce your efficiency quite a lot. And ask them what they think the SCOP is going to be, or what they think the efficiency through the year is going to be. And is there any way of improving that? If they know how to answer those questions, you should be okay. It's all about, as long as you've got a good survey in the first place, so you've got a good heat loss calculation, and you marry that up with low flow temperatures. So as long as they say, well, we're going to make sure that we cap it at 45-degree flow temperature, and that's going to protect our efficiency, you'll be fine.
Okay. Wow. But it does feel like, no offense, but it does feel like one of those, like, all that language you just used, I'm even now for me, it still feels relatively inaccessible. So I guess like my piece of advice to anyone who wants to do this is to go with you guys, or to go with someone that you recommend if they're not in this part of the country, because I can't, like literally, I can't tell you how grateful I am to VitoEnergy and to Liam and Greg and the team, because we live in a warm house now. But yeah, it's been emotional. Like really emotional.
It's so weird. So a lot of the cherry on the top stuff that we're talking about, a lot of the efficiencies and the education for the engineer, for the installer, is stuff that we've been doing for gas boilers for decades, and now it's transferred over into heat pumps. But the difference of a gas boiler that's been not optimized, which is most of them by the way, means that it will run at 85% efficiency. So not that bad considering gas is quite cheap, and the best you can get is sort of 96% efficiency. But again, that 10%, no one really cared because gas was so cheap. You transfer the same skills over into heat pumps about low temperature and oversizing pipe work and calculating flow rate, etc. And it can make the difference of 300%, which is thousands of pounds a year. So finding somebody that knows all of that stuff, finding a company that knows all of that stuff, is the most important thing, because it can either be the worst thing you've ever done, but it should be the best thing that you've ever done.
So I think it's interesting, and maybe not for this particular conversation, but it sounds to me like we've got heating engineers that are going, oh, I need to get ahead of the curve and switch into renewables, and moving over into a relatively new skill set, which is air source heat pumps. And it sounds like the training is not fit for purpose, and therefore some of the workforce, I'm not going to say majority, but a lot of the workforce maybe is not, it's not learning the right things. Is there anywhere that who teaches how to install? Because even Mitsubishi, they're just a bit useless, and their engineers don't seem to know either. And they make the bloody things.
I've sent my engineers on lots of different manufacturers' courses, lots of BPEC courses, and learning how to install, design, etc. There's very few that are optimizing focused. So HeatGeek is pretty much the only decent low carbon or low temperature system design training, which is online, which is very, very good. But apart from that, all of the other industry courses generally teach you how to fit the thing and don't teach you how to optimize it, which is the biggest difference. We need to train up more people, but get the existing courses, the BPECs and the LCLs, etc., and add that optimizing element so that people understand that. And I hope someone does it. It's not a job for me, but someone needs to add that value, because if we're going to 9x the amount of installers in the industry, then we need to address the boots on the ground level and make sure that the engineers have got and really, it's when I said earlier about the irresponsible nature of just pouring money in at the top, it's a hell of a lot of pressure for the engineers that are there for this industry of mine, which has kind of been stagnant for 20 plus years, where we've learned how to do the hands-on bit, but none of the calculation, the maths, etc., has really been taught. It hasn't been accessible to the majority. So not only is it irresponsible to throw money in from the top and hope that it gets delivered by the engineers, but there's a lot of pressure for those engineers to have on them. Not only have you got to physically do the job you've always been doing, but now you've got to know how to work out mass flow rate, or to the oversize factor for a radiator, depending on the heat loss of a room. Like there's loads of it that and it's only in the last couple of years that there's been stuff available that's emerging, and it's way behind all of the top level stuff that's shoving low carbon, which I completely support the end goal, but we're going about it just a bit the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think that's the top line message really for the government, or whatever government is in, is that actually if they want to set this up for success, they need to maybe rethink what the way that they're approaching it, which it's the same for the construction industry. We want to build, what are they saying? I think we need to build 450,000 new houses. And, I sit on the board of Persimmon and I run Resi, and it is abundantly clear we are lacking bricklayers, we are lacking carpenters, like all of the things that how we've traditionally built houses. Nobody's going into that trade anymore, and the average age of a bricklayer is 56. So I think we have I don't think we've got a housing crisis in the sense of like, there's not enough homes for people to live in, because it's actually it's a much broader crisis than that. We have not enough house types in the right areas and enough of the right people to build more. So it's a lot more nuanced than I think the public domain gives it credit for. Well, I mean, I've got a real issue with the media, period, and the lack of like real journalism anymore. So it's just cheap headlines, and it's really easy to get sucked in by the whole heat pumps don't work. And I was nervous about heat pumps when I went into it. Then I've had this horrendous 2-year journey, and I was like, I literally at any point in that journey would not have recommended a heat pump to anybody. And now I've come out the other side, and really all that's missing is the skilled bit. So if I'd have gone to the right supplier in the first place, picked the right heat pump, had it installed correctly and optimized, my journey would have been so different, and I would have been evangelical about it. And I guess where I am now is, I would encourage anyone to look at heat pumps, and if it's right for the house, go for it. I think, honestly, it is such a warm, lovely house now. It's very quiet, and I feel good about myself because I'm doing better for the environment. But it's been a long road, and the only mistake I made is not getting the right skilled engineers involved. So I think if you do that, I'm 100% heat pump pro.
It's tough though, isn't it? Because if how is the homeowner supposed to know whether the company's any good? A lot of companies think they're really good as well, until you see the results and you measure them. MCS is a contentious issue that we can talk about briefly.
What is MCS?
So MCS is the Microgeneration Certification Scheme. So it used to be a government body, it's now independent, and they're basically a gatekeeper for government funding for renewables. So you have to have an MCS qualifying install if you have a heat pump and you want to get a government grant. So we operate, as VitoEnergy, we operate an MCS umbrella, so we've got lots of installers around the southeast, and we traditionally, MCS umbrellas are there as a finance gatekeeper, so they facilitate the money coming in from the government to prop up the installation of a heat pump. I think we've got more of a responsibility than that as an MCS umbrella, which is to make sure that the quality and the standards are upheld. MCS should do that. And they're going through a consultation at the moment where they're going to overhaul, hopefully, and they'll start doing that, and they're going to measure the efficiency compared to what the performance estimate was. And that I think that's all they need to do.
Yeah.
But because they don't currently, we feel like it's our duty to do that. So if you're going to find a company to do a heat pump, finding either an engineer or an engineering company that are MCS, but also have and use all of that right narrative about efficiency and low temperature and oversizing, etc., or use an umbrella company that will do that and ensure that the job has been done to the right standards.
And I 100% agree with that, because obviously I've complained, and I think I complained to REC, don't know what it stands for, and NAPIT, don't know what that stands for, and it was beautiful. The dance that they did was beautiful, because it was like, REC was like, yeah, but it's been sold, and now it's not our job, so speak to NAPIT. And then I spoke to NAPIT, and they took the complaint, but then because you rectified it, they're like, oh, you've rectified it, so now it's not our job, you need to speak to REC. And at this point, I lost my rag, because I was just like, what is the point of any of you?
There should be one point. There should be one point of control, and you should have one place to go to if you've got a grievance.
Well, exactly, because the people that we use, that I will not name, even though I really want to, they were MCS accredited. So I'd done the right things, but yeah, it feels to me like it's a bit loosey-goosey, the controls, really, isn't it? It's like there's not really, and I suppose you get this in all nascent industries that are just emerging. That there's a lot of teething problems, but this feels like quite a lot of teething problems. So it's interesting that you say there is a solution, which is just like do a simple thing, benchmark it, and go, oh, did it get better? I mean, and I think we could take that kind of principle to lots of things that happen in the home, and we'd probably be in a lot better place.
Yeah, I think so. And the way that we're measuring it at the moment is through an onboard energy monitor, looking at the amount that it uses in electricity and the amount that it puts out in heat. It's not perfect, and there's other things that we could put in that are more perfect, but because it's the same system and we're benchmarking it against itself, it's accurate enough for us to know that it's got better, and also the fact that the house is warm and your bills have come down. So there are things that we can put in place and we can calculate it, because the way that we calculated your heat loss might be different to the way that another company would do it, just because if you use different software. So it's all, and it's quite fallible. Whereas measuring it, if you put in something like an energy monitor, or if you used a data logging system that can look at the heat loss throughout the whole house, measurement is a lot more accurate, whereas calculation can be a bit nuanced. We've never undersold or
Sized.
We've never undersized a heat pump. You know, we've just gone through a cold winter. We've got hundreds of installs in there. We didn't get a single call from anyone saying they're cold. So we know that our heat losses are accurate, or as accurate as they can be. And other companies quite often oversize a heat pump, A, because they can upsell and give you a more expensive one, and B, because they're less likely to get callbacks. Oversizing only affects the efficiency. It's not going to affect the heat in the home.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to mine. Mine's oversized, so wow. Okay, look, fascinating. I know it's quite technical, but I think for anybody considering a heat pump, sadly, at this point in time, you, as a consumer, you have to get a base level of knowledge, otherwise you're going to really trip up. So hopefully this has been somewhat educational and interesting. I know it's now a favoured pub quiz topic of mine, air source heat pumps.